I am Dr. Devesh, Associate Professor in Government Medical College, Shahjahanpur. Now we will discuss the very important topic, hypothalamus. Hypothalamus, although is a very tiny structure, it is very important. Although hypothalamus is a very tiny structure and weight is about 10 gram only, but it is very, very important for our body because the hypothalamus regulate most of the vegetative and the endocrine function of the body. This is important that hypothalamus is what? Hypothalamus play important role in what? Regulating most of the vegetative and the most of the endocrine function of the body. That means it is the most important part of the body that regulate the homeostasis of the body, right? So hypothalamus even is a very tiny structure, very small, right? In a few weight is only 10 gram, but this is important because most of the vegetative and most of the endocrine function, right, controlled by the hypothalamus. Next, we discuss the right functions of the hypothalamus in detail, right? And first is regulation of the autonomic nervous system. In the hypothalamus, this is important is there is a lot of nuclei present in the hypothalamus. And these all nuclei, right, may individually act or combinedly act, right? Then first is very important function is the regulation of the autonomic function. The hypothalamus, according to the Sarrington, right, hypothalamus is the head ganglia of the autonomic nervous system because the anterior part of the hypothalamus act as parasympathetic area, whereas the posterior part of the hypothalamus act as the sympathetic area. When these part stimulated, anterior or posterior, then it act as parasympathetic and the sympathetic area. For example, in the cardiovascular system, when in the cardiovascular system, right, when the hypothalamus posterior part stimulated, some participants are coming. So we discuss the autonomic function of the hypothalamus. I say, right, according to the Sarrington, hypothalamus is what? Head ganglia of the ANS. That is, ANS is controlled by the hypothalamus ultimately. And the anterior hypothalamus act as a parasympathetic area and the posterior hypothalamus act as a sympathetic area. For example, in a cardiovascular system, when the posterior part of the hypothalamus is stimulated, that means it stimulated the sympathetic area. Then what occurs? Then it happens what? In a cardiovascular changes. The cardiovascular heart rate, blood pressure is increases or decreases? Anyone? Heart rate and blood pressure increases because posterior part act as the sympathetic area and also causes sympathetic stimulation causes the vasoconstriction, right? And for example, the regulation of the peristalsis and the secretomotor function of the GIT. When the posterior part is stimulated, that means the sympathetic area is stimulated. The sympathetic area is stimulated. That means the secretion and the motility of the GIT decreases. When the anterior part, when stimulated of the hypothalamus, that means the parasympathetic area is stimulated. When the parasympathetic area is stimulated, then this means what? The parasympathetic causes the increase the secretion and the motility of the GIT. So this way, the hypothalamus regulate the autonomic nerve function, right? Our autonomic nervous system is ultimately controlled by the hypothalamus. Second function important is regulation of the endocrine function. Previously, I asked the hypothalamus, right, mostly control the endocrine function. Now we discuss how. The hormone, right, releases from the hypothalamus that control the anterior pituitary gland and also posterior pituitary gland. And the anterior pituitary gland, for the control, the hypothalamus secrete the releasing hormone and the inhibitory hormone. So some example, can you quote the some example of the releasing hormone and inhibitory hormone that control the anterior pituitary gland hormone? Anyone? Okay. The anterior pituitary gland hormones controlled by the releasing the hormone by the hypothalamus, like for example, CRH, corticotropic releasing hormone, TRH, GnRH, GRH, GIH, PRH, PIH, right? So CRH control the ACTH and TRH control the TSH and GnRH control the sexual hormone and GRH control the growth releasing hormone, right? And GIH is control the growth hormone, that is growth inhibitory hormone. And also prolactin regulated by the secreting the PRH and the PIH, prolactin releasing hormone and the prolactin inhibitory hormone. So you can see the all the anterior pituitary hormone regulated by the ultimately hypothalamus. So indirectly hypothalamus through the CRS, through the ACTH control the adrenal gland, and through the TRH or through the TSH control the thyroid gland, and GnRH through the sexual hormone and growth hormone and prolactin hormone. So almost all glands indirectly ultimately controlled by the hypothalamus, whereas the posterior pituitary gland secrete the what? Not secrete, it only the store the two hormone ADH and what? ADH and oxytocin. And these hormone synthesis in hypothalamus and nuclei involved in this, the supraoptic nucleus and the paraventricular nucleus. Both nuclei secrete both hormone, but ADH mostly secreted by the supraoptic nuclei, whereas oxytocin hormone mainly secreted by the paraventricular nucleus, right? So ultimately, all the endocrine function ultimately controlled by the hypothalamus. So it is very important function of hypothalamus. Now we discuss the third function. regulation of the sleep-wake cycle. In hypothalamus, there is always two centers. And like regulation of the sleep-wake center, there are two centers. One is sleep facilitating center and one is waking center. And the sleep facilitating center present in the anterior part of the hypothalamus, whereas the waking center present as the posterior part. I am audible?
You are audible, Dr. Devesh.
Okay. So the regulation of the sleep-wake cycle, only there is a two center, the sleep facilitating center when is stimulated, then it causes the sleep, and the waking center is stimulated, then it stimulates, leads called wakefulness, right? And this sleep is also as a negative phenomena. That means stimulation of the wakefulness, right? After the inhibition of the wakefulness center by the anterior hypothalamus also cause sleep, right? So there is a negative feedback phenomena. When the sleep facilitating center inhibits the waking center, then again it causes
क्या हुआ वो चलेगा क्या वो
सिग्नल का प्रॉब्लम हो गया स्टूडेंट रिकॉर्ड पे जा रहा है इसलिए Yes, visible.
okay. So we are discussing the regulation of the circadian rhythm. So by definition, the circadian rhythm is the rhythmic fluctuation in a certain physiological parameter of body during the day-night cycle, right? For example, sleep-wake cycle, body temperature, activity pattern, or say rhythmic secretion of the hormones like ACTH, growth hormone, melatonin. तो आप देखते हैं कि कुछ हार्मोन्स पर्टिकुलर टाइम पे ज्यादा सीक्रेट होते हैं और बॉडी टेम्परेचर एट द इवनिंग देयर इज अ राइज ऑफ बॉडी टेम्परेचर बट देयर इज अ रिदम all time all days of evening there is a 1 degree increase in a temperature. So by definition all things are related to the rhythmic fluctuation. The fluctuation is rhythmic but in a certain physiological parameter during the day-night cycle is known as circadian rhythm, right? And the very important is the nuclei responsible for the circadian rhythm is the suprachiasmatic nuclei. This is also a PG question. What nuclei is responsible for the circadian rhythm? There is a suprachiasmatic nuclei is responsible for the regulation of the circadian rhythm. On the applied portion of the circadian rhythm, That is the jet lag. Jet lag is what? When any person go from one country to the other country, right? Then their day and night cycle is different. Like when any person go from India to America, then the day night cycle is different. So some few days, a person feels some headache, right? Some irritation or any difference, disturbances in our body. Why it occur? And this resolve without any medicine within a few days. And reason is, what is the reason? Because it is thought, it is believed that the suprachiasmatic nuclei has its own biological clock. When this biological clock, right, goes to the another country, then the internal biological clock of the suprachiasmatic nuclei and the environmental clock did not match, because their day-night cycle is changed. So these features come due to the day-night variation, and after a few days it disappears, because the suprachiasmatic nuclei set the own biological clock according to the environment or new environment. And when these internal biological clock and the external clock when matches, then these features disappear. So this is the right applied part of the circadian rhythm, right? Next very important function is regulation of the feeding behavior. I also told there is in a hypothalamus there are two centers. In a feeding behavior regulation, there is again two centers. One is feeding center or hunger center, right? And the feeding center or hunger center present in the lateral nuclei of the hypothalamus. And when it is stimulated, then it causes the hunger. And important is this hunger or feeding center is always active, right? And another part is satiety center. And this satiety center, when it is this satiety center present in a nuclei, the ventromedial nuclei of the hypothalamus. And when this is stimulated, then it inhibits the hunger center and act as satiety center stimulation causes the sensation of food intake or fulfillment, right? So there is a balance activity of these food, hunger center and the satiety center. When there is a disturb in a balance, then there is a lot of this hunger center when highly stimulated, then what occurs? When the hunger center is highly stimulated, then it causes increase in the food intake, and this is known as hyperphagia. And when the feeding center, due to the destruction, due to the any less activity, it causes the loss of appetite, and this is known as anorexia, right? So we can say there is a balance between the hunger center and the satiety center, and there is a lot of theory for the in reference to the this feeding behavior. For example, glucostatic theory. First one is the glucostatic theory, and this is the accepted theory, and second is the lipostatic theory, and this is also accepted theory. But other is the gut peptide theory and the thermostatic theory. These are not accepted theory. So we discuss the glucostatic theory. Glucostatic theory says when we eat, then there is an increase in the level of the glucose in our blood, and the satiety center has the receptor for the glucose. and this receptor is known as glucoreceptor or glucostate. And when this is stimulated, then the satiety center is stimulated, and satiety center is stimulated, then it causes the inhibition of the hunger center, and person feel fulfillment, right? So this is the glucostatic theory. And second is the lipostatic theory. There is a also feeding center also respond. In a glucostatic theory, the satiety center involved, and the lipostatic theory, the feeding center involved. This is important, right? And lipostatic theory says what? Feeding center also respond to the change in the fatty acid and amino acid level. And this, when increases, then it causes the release of the leptin hormone. And leptin hormone produced in the adipose cell. And it causes the, right, decrease the food intake, because this leptin hormone, right, decreases the food intake. अब मैं और डिटेल में नहीं जाऊंगा, क्योंकि कुछ न्यूरोपेप्टाइड्स हैं जो ऑरेक्सोजेनिक हैं और कुछ हैं एंटी ऑरेक्सोजेनिक हैं, वो डिटेल फिर ज्यादा लंबा हो जाएगा, राइट? तो अभी लेप्टिन हार्मोन, राइट, प्रोड्यूस डिक्रीज फूड इंटेक. तो दिस इज द regulation of the feeding behavior. Now next is the regulation of the sexual behavior. तो हम लोग देख रहे हैं कि हाइपोथैलेमस, राइट, इनिशियल में मैंने कहा था इट कंट्रोल ऑलमोस्ट ऑल वेजिटेटिव एंड ऑलमोस्ट ऑल एंडोक्राइन फंक्शन. तो वेजिटेटिव फंक्शन देखिए सभी कंट्रोल यही कर रहा है. अब नेक्स्ट है रेगुलेशन ऑफ द सेक्सुअल बिहेवियर. अब सेक्सुअल बिहेवियर, द ट्यूबरल पार्ट of the hypothalamus, right? The tuberal part of the hypothalamus, it causes what? It regulates the basal secretion of the, right, gonadotropin releasing hormone or sexual hormone. So tuberal region maintain the basal secretion of the gonadotropin releasing hormone. But important is what? Important is this tuberal region connection with the preoptic area. There's another area of the hypothalamus, and tuberal region is the another part of the hypothalamus, and connected with the some fiber. And connection with the tuberal region with the preoptic area is essential for the cyclic surge of the gonadotropin releasing hormone before the ovulation. You know, for the ovulation, there is a need of the cyclic surge of the luteinizing hormone. If the first, this LS surge controlled by the hypothalamus by the releasing the cyclic surge of the gonadotropin releasing hormone. तो LS सर्ज तभी होगा जब GnRH का सर्ज होगा, और GnRH सर्ज कौन करा रहा है? हाइपोथैलेमस करा रहा है. तो अल्टीमेटली देखिए सेक्सुअल बिहेवियर मेल और फीमेल में भी, राइट, रेगुलेट हाइपोथैलेमस ही करता है और मेनली फीमेल्स में करता है. तो इसका ये जो कनेक्शन है, अगर ये कनेक्शन डिस्ट्रक्ट हो जाए, इफ देयर इज अ डिस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ कनेक्शन बिटवीन द ट्यूबरल रीजन एंड प्री ऑप्टिक रीजन, देन इट प्रिवेंट द ओवुलेशन. And when this connection is stimulated by any way, it causes ovulation, even not at the time of the menstrual cycle, but any time when stimulated this part connection, then it causes the ovulation, right? So this hypothalamus stimulates sexual behavior in both male and female, but mainly in the female. And next important function is regulation in the emotional and instinctual behavior. अब you think the regulation of the emotions is the function of the limbic system. But what is the role of the hypothalamus? Because you know the regulation of the emotions is the function of the limbic system. But question arises, then what hypothalamus do? The hypothalamus, right, along with limbic system के साथ, it concern with affective nature of the sensory impulse. इसका मतलब जो भी सेंसरी इंपल्स आ रही है, राइट, उससे कंसर्न है हाइपोथैलेमस. और दिस सेंसरी इंपल्स या सेंसेशन, it may be pleasant or it may be not pleasant. That is why in a hypothalamus there are two centers. One is the reward center and one is the punishment center. When any sensory stimuli stimulate the reward center, then it causes the pleasant sensation. And then the limbic system, right, causes the any emotion like happiness, right? And when the punishment center is stimulated, then it causes unpleasant sensation. Then this hypothalamus, there are the two center, reward center and punishment center. Reward center is stimulated, then the pleasant sensation feel. And when the punishment center, name tells, right, and punishment center when stimulated, then unpleasant sensation feel. And these, according to these sensation, right, emotions are developed by the limbic system. So limbic system cannot work without hypothalamus. So hypothalamus is a very important role in the emotions. Otherwise, limbic system, right, cannot develop the emotions. And hypothalamus tells about the, right, affective nature of the sensory impulse. It may be pleasant or it may be unpleasant, right? So this is the regulations of the emotion, the role of the regulation of the emotions of the hypothalamus. Next important is the regulation of the body temperature. Body temperature, again there are two centers. One is the heat loss center and one is the heat gain center. And this heat loss center present in the anterior part of the hypothalamus, whereas heat gain center present in the posterior part of the hypothalamus, right? And this center also is the what? Networking of the nerve cells, yeah, neurons. When blood comes in this center, then this nerve senses the temperature, right? And it is normal temperature of the body is 37 degrees centigrade or 98.6 degree Fahrenheit. When it is increases or decreases, when the temperature is increases due to the any cause, then the heat loss center is stimulated, that is present in the anterior hypothalamus. Then what occur? The anterior hypothalamus, it causes the, right, what? For the, it is the heat loss center, that means it causes the heat loss. And by which mechanism? By the sweating or by the vasodilation, right? And when the body temperature decreases, then the center is stimulated. You know, when temperature decreases, then the heat gain center is stimulated. And this heat gain center, you know, present in a posterior hypothalamus. And what is the mechanism by which it causes the heat gain? It is by the shivering or the cutaneous vasoconstriction. So by this two way, right, it maintain the body temperature. Another important is, in a fever, there is an increase in the body temperature, but hypothalamus can't regulate the body temperature. And what is the reason behind it? Think about it. Answer is hypothalamus act as thermostat, and thermostats of hypothalamus normally, and in a normal set point is 37 degrees centigrade or 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. When the fever, right, due to the bacterial or anything, so these bacterial secreted the substances, then it causes the set point above the normal level. When the set point of the hypothalamus set above the normal level, like मान लीजिए 100 degree or 110 degree, then this act as a thermostat. Set point is 100 or 110. Then the mechanism of heat loss is not regulated. That is why in a fever, the hypothalamus not regulated the body temperature, right? Another very important function is the regulation of the water balance. What do you think about the regulation of the water balance? Again, here two centers. One is, thirst center, and another important is osmoreceptor of supraoptic nuclei, right? The position of the thirst center is lateral nucleus of the hypothalamus, and the position of the supraoptic nucleus you know better. For example, and both center is stimulated by the when the increase in the plasma hypertonicity, because they are in a supraoptic nucleus, right? Receptor is osmoreceptor, so it is stimulated by the osmolarity, and thirst center also stimulated by the plasma hypertonicity or increase osmolarity, right? For example, there is a decrease in the body water. Then what is the mechanism by which hypothalamus control the body of the water? First, when the body water decreases, that means plasma osmolarity increases. When the plasma osmolarity increases, then it stimulates thirst center and also the osmoreceptors in the supraoptic nucleus, right? And when the thirst center is stimulated, then it causes increase in the water ingestion, your desire to drink a water. And when the osmoreceptor in supraoptic nucleus increases, stimulated, then it causes what? It stimulates the posterior pituitary gland to release the ADH hormone. And you know the function of the ADH hormone, it causes what? It causes increase in the absorption of the water through the nephron. So ultimately, it decreases the water excretion through the urine. So by the two way, when the body water decreases, then through the thirst center, there is a intake increases, and through the supraoptic nucleus, ADH hormone, there is a exit decreases. So this restore the body of the water. And just opposite, when water body increases, then just opposite phenomena occur, right? So this is the mechanism by which the hypothalamus regulate the water balance. So these are the functions of the hypothalamus. If you see the hypothalamus, in initial I say the hypothalamus control or regulate the almost all vegetative and almost all endocrine function of the body, and this is the main homeostasis organ of the body. अब आप लोग समझ सकते हैं जितने भी फंक्शन मैंने आपको बताए हैं तो सभी वेजिटेटिव फंक्शन और लगभग ऑलमोस्ट ऑल एंडोक्राइन फंक्शन कवर कर रहा है हाइपोथैलेमस, क्योंकि हाइपोथैलेमस से एंडोक्राइन फंक्शन में देखा तो एंटीरियर पिट्यूटरी या पोस्टीरियर पिट्यूटरी को कंट्रोल कर रहा है, और एंटीरियर पिट्यूटरी से निकलने वाले हार्मोन एड्रिनल ग्लैंड को कंट्रोल कर रहे हैं, सेक्स हार्मोन्स को कंट्रोल कर रहे हैं, थायराइड हार्मोन को कंट्रोल कर रहे हैं। तो और पोस्टीरियर पिट्यूटरी तो अल्टीमेटली सीक्रेटेड बाय द हाइपोथैलेमस. So almost all endocrine function controlled by the hypothalamus. And for example, the autonomic function, the hypothalamus is the head ganglia, right? So all autonomic nervous system or nervous function is controlled by the hypothalamus. Sleep wake cycle is also controlled by the hypothalamus. Circadian rhythm is also controlled by the hypothalamus. Feeding behavior is also controlled by the hypothalamus. Sexual behavior, very important role in emotion. Without hypothalamus, limbic system cannot create the emotions. Body temperature controlled by the hypothalamus. Regulation of the water balance, again controlled by the hypothalamus. So hypothalamus, even a very tiny structure, and volume is very in mm, and weight is only 10 gram, but it is very important, most important structure of the body, regulating all functions of the body and main homeostasis organ of the body. And some applied portion of the now we discuss the some applied portion of the hypothalamus. There is not lot. First is the diabetic insipidus. You know in detail in the renal system, when there is a deficiency of the ADH, then it causes the diabetic insipidus. Second one is the narcolepsy.
It's visible. It's visible. Continue.
Okay. So some clinical syndrome, I asked diabetic insipidus. This is you study in a renal system. And second is the narcolepsy. Narcolepsy basically is the hypothalamic disorder with the abnormal sleep pattern, right? And abnormal sleep pattern in which uncontrollable urge to sleep during the daytime activity. But this is a very in a short time, with a few seconds or about some 10 to 20 minutes. This is the some abnormal sleep pattern, but the time duration is very short, but in which what occur? Uncontrollable urge to the sleep during the daytime. Daytime में अगर हम लेक्चर ले रहे हैं और स्टूडेंट चाह रहा है कि वो ना सोए, लेकिन अगर उसको नार्कोलेप्सी है, हाइपोथैलेमिक डिसऑर्डर है, तो वो कितनी भी कोशिश करेगा और वो स्लीप में चला जाएगा, लेकिन खुद ही फ्यू सेकंड्स के बाद, ये ड्यूरेशन बहुत शॉर्ट है, कुछ फ्यू सेकंड्स और मिनट्स के बाद वो अगेन अवेक, राइट? तो दिस इज द नार्कोलेप्सी. And last one is the cataplexy. Cataplexy is what? Cataplexy refers to the sudden emotional outburst. Sudden emotional outburst of anything like anger, fear, excitement, and this is also is a very short duration in a few second or few minutes. But the cataplexy often associated with the narcolepsy. जब कैटाप्लेक्सी होगा तो उसके साथ नार्कोलेप्सी भी मिलता है पेशेंट्स में. तो पेशेंट्स जो आते हैं कैटाप्लेक्सी के, तो कैटाप्लेक्सी के साथ में उनको नार्कोलेप्सी भी होता है. तो दिस इज not very much clinical part of the hypothalamus. There is a diabetic insipidus, narcolepsy, and the cataplexy, right? So this is all about the hypothalamus, but in a short, because there are lecture in a 2-hour lecture, but I completed in a almost 1 hour, right? Thank you.
There is one, I don't know whether she is faculty or a student, Ishita, and there is one person with myself. They are there in the Zoom meeting room. Ishita, you have any question related to central nervous system, any doubt? Dr. Devesh is with us and he has taken his first lecture. So if you can unmute and ask question, you can put into the chat. Both Ishita and myself. Ishita, are you a student? You can unmute and ask the question, any doubt you have. We understand that you joined a bit late. Just you have joined in. For myself, no questions. Okay. Thanks, Dr. Devesh. I think we have covered the function of hypothalamus and applied physiology of hypothalamus. We'll try to cover the other part in our next lecture.
Okay.
And today is a match, and although we have say 300 registrations, but the people are we are just they are writing some examination. Every medical colleges have some terminal examination and all. So that's why, and we have changed the time day as well, because we are initially doing all the lectures on Sunday. So this is the second week we have when we have made the changes and we are not organizing it on Sunday. So there is again a confusion, but we are continuously sending the emails and WhatsApp messages to all our students to understand that when the lectures are will be conducted. So slowly and gradually we are getting a good number of students. Initially when it started, there are some 40 to 50 students are there in our per lecture. But now we have changed the schedule. So we are sure that students will keep joining after writing their examination and all, and then they will get benefit out of it. Thanks, Dr. Devesh, for joining us and sparing your precious time to us. We'll continue your lecture in our next program, maybe on next Monday or the coming Saturday. I'll give you a call and take your availability. Thanks all the students.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you all.
Now I can leave.
Yeah, please. Thanks.